everyone, and welcome. This is Nicole from Illuminated Movement Astrology, talking to you today about the upcoming solar eclipse in the sign of Libra on October the 14th, 2023. This eclipse is an intense one. It's a big one because it's squaring the planet of evolution, transformation, and intensity, our friend Pluto. So, as we go through this eclipse, what can we expect? Well, I'm going to talk about it in the global sense, in a broad sense of what to expect, how this fits into the bigger picture. I'm going to talk about the Pluto and Libra generation just briefly, because this eclipse, for some of those souls that incarnated, happens to be sitting right on top of their natal Pluto as well, giving them a little extra evolutionary rocket fuel, if you will, giving them an extra evolutionary boost. And then finally, I'm going to take this eclipse through the houses, through the signs. So if you know your rising sign, perfect. If you don't, you can use your sun sign. And then I'll give you a little bit more of a personalized idea of what you might be able to expect coming from this eclipse energy. And of course, squaring off with Pluto. Before I get to that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you all so much to my new subscribers and the people that have been commenting on my last couple of videos. I'm kind of blown away, honestly, by the response. So thank you, letting me know that this stuff is resonating for you and letting me know what I can share more of. So if you do like this video, like it, comment it, ask a question. I'm happy to answer them as long as they're appropriate. So without further ado, let's get into the eclipse. All right, some of the major themes of this eclipse. Balance, right? Libra is the scales. So balancing the me and you energy in our lives, making peace, right? And being able to move on. So making peace maybe in the literal sense, but also making peace with where we are, right? An acceptance of where we are if it's not optimal, so that we can actually look at the situation and make choices to move forward into growth. Also, recovering parts of ourselves that we've disowned. And this north node of this eclipse is almost exactly conjunct Eris. Eris having to do with the parts of us that feel left out. Also conjuncting Chiron, the wounded healer, recovering parts of ourselves that maybe we've felt ashamed of, or maybe, feeling like we can't move forward, or we don't have any passion in our life or purpose in our life. Really being able to recover all of those parts, leading to a major transformation. Because again, this eclipse is square to the planet of transformation, Pluto. All of this coming together, hopefully to create a collective healing, which I think we definitely need. This eclipse will be most powerfully felt if it's aspecting planets in your natal chart. Okay, if it's occurring on an angle in your chart. And just as a reminder, the angles are the ascendant, the descendant, the MC, and the IC on your chart, essentially like your compass, like your north, south, east, west. This will have a little extra significance for some of the souls that incarnated in the Pluto and Libra generation, especially those born between 1979 and 1981. And this also depends on your soul contract in a general sense. And what do I mean by that? Well, what did you come here to explore? What did you come here to experience? What are the major themes that your soul is choosing to evolve and choosing to experience? And this also ties in with your level of consciousness around the ask of this eclipse energy. So what do I mean by that? Well, in other words, how effectively realized are these planetary energies in your own life? And how are you interacting with them in a bigger sense of how this fits into your growth? So one of the concepts in evolutionary astrology has to do around levels of consciousness. And this is not about judging anyone or saying anyone's better than anyone else. There's a concept of the soul coming in and experiencing life over and over and over throughout different lifetimes, right? Being reborn, reincarnation. And so there's a concept that as a soul, we come to experience all things that could possibly be. And so at different points in our soul's evolution cycle, depending on where we are, we may come and choose to experience things in what's known as the consensus state, which is really kind of just going with the flow, going along with things as they are, not really necessarily feeling the need to question or break out of what's, kind of the accepted reality. That's one possible level. Another possible level is the state of individuation, where we are breaking free from what we consider the consensus, kind of waking up. And it's my opinion that we are having a collective awakening of people who are in this individuation state, or at least transitioning into this individuated state in some way, right? They're waking up from the matrix. How often are we hearing that? So that's just a couple of levels. There are more, but for the purposes of this video, I think it kind of makes sense to talk about those things, because not everyone that you encounter is going to be making choices, right? Or going to be doing things from a perspective that you agree with. Right. And I think that's a really important thing to talk about when we talk about Libra, because considering other points of view is one of Libra's specialties. And those are points of view that we might not necessarily agree with or find, particularly attractive, right? All Libra things. So, Libra basics, right? Libra, how I relate to you, right? What's the balance and imbalance? When we're talking about Libra, we're talking about having a sense of neutrality, right? Of impartiality, of harmony and disharmony. Libra is really good at initiating relationships. It is the social sign that, sees another person and says, "Hi, how are you?" Right? Or at least engages in that. It's kind of the first sign in the natural zodiac where we come upon the other, right? It comes out of the personal signs, which are the first six signs, and moves more into the social and transpersonal signs, the universal signs. So, commitments, contracts, things like that also fall under the auspice of Libra: negotiations, diplomacy, mediation, and conflict. Not necessarily Libra's favorite place to engage in conflict, but it's a really important one for Libra. And the reason being is Libra has the ability to see multiple points of view, has the ability to seek out a harmonizing solution, to seek out, in a sense, maybe a compromise where people can find common ground, right? Or at least attempt to. And one of the other things with Libra is judgment. And we can use judgment. It's kind of a tricky one, but it's can be used in multiple senses, like using your own judgment, weighing things out. Is this, feeling good? Is it not? It also falls under the auspices of justice, right? Receiving judgment in some kind of legal way. And, that doesn't always go in a way where we feel like it's being delivered fairly. So that's a challenge in Libra. It's one of the areas that maybe is more tricky when we're talking about Libra. And of course, Libra is ruled by Venus. So we have to take a look at not only our own natal Venus placement, but Venus in general. What do we love? What are we magnetizing to ourselves? What do we find beautiful and valuable and harmonious? Those are all in the realm of Venus. So looking at the actual chart itself, again, this is happening in Pacific Standard Time at 10:55 a.m. So you can adjust for your time zone. I did put this chart at 0 degrees Aries, so hopefully it's maybe a little bit easier to look at. So that would put it in its natural zodiac position. So a couple of the big things that we've got going on here, we've got Mercury, right? The moon, the sun, and the south node all in the sign of Libra. And so let me go ahead and get over here. That's on that right corner of my chart, all in there. The actual eclipse is happening at 21 degrees, and we've got the nodes at 24, Mercury at 17. So because of this range, just pop down here for a second, we're going to be looking for if you have anything in your own chart in the cardinal signs, which remember are Aries, right? Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Okay, in your own chart between about 15 to 26 degrees. You may use bigger orbs. I like them a little bit tighter. This might feel a little bit more personal to you, a little bit more intense to you, or you might be given the opportunity to engage with this energy a little bit more. It just depends, again, on your soul contract and where you are in your own personal journey. But this is the range that we're looking at in those cardinal signs. So if you have planets or points in your natal chart that are conjunct, right, next to each other, like peanut butter and jelly, square, that make those 90-degree angles, right? That little conflict energy, that growth energy, or opposite, which is on the opposite side, right? Like Aries, Libra, for example, then you're going to feel this most likely the most. Okay. So we've got all these planets in Libra, and they happen to be opposite over here on the other side with Aries, the south node Eris, which I included on this chart, and Chiron. So looking at this, to me, one of the big energies of the healing component that I spoke of the me and you, healing me and you, is this Aries. Aries is the me energy, right? The I energy in our lives. It's our self, it's our identity, right? When it's related to the first house. And so with that, we've got Chiron, right? Chiron is a healing energy. It shows us where we need to, in essence, do some work, where we have underlying patterns that are painful to us sometimes, or are causing us strife in our life, or are needing our attention so that we can move forward and no longer, I guess, have the rock in our shoe, right? So we've got Chiron there at 17 degrees, right? Opposing Mercury. And that's almost exact as well. So for this, what we're looking at is Mercury, in essence, our thoughts, right? The way that we think, the way that we communicate, the way that we speak, opposing Chiron. So we may feel that there has been a topic in our lives around speaking up for ourselves in relationships, right? Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe we speak too harshly towards other people. Maybe we haven't really gotten that Venusian Libran sign of, oh, I don't always have to be on attack mode. And that can be a trauma response, right? That doesn't necessarily mean the person's doing it on purpose to cause problems. It could be that that's how they've learned to cope. So being aware of that, right? Or again, the opposite side, feeling like I can't be heard, feeling like I can't speak up for myself, feeling like my relationships are in some way challenged by communication. Or maybe it's just the simple thought of being in relationship is challenging. And what do I mean by that? Well, that could be a number of things. There seems to be a big energy, at least in our society, around being in relationship. That relationships, for some of us, we grew up in the era of you complete me, right? That we need the other in order to feel whole. And so there could be something there. Could be another place where committing has been really difficult, right? Committing in a relationship, we're just not there yet for whatever reason. Maybe we don't want to give up our self-autonomy. Maybe we had modeling of relationships in our early years that were very controlling, and we don't want to be controlled. Whatever it is, taking a look at that and making sure that when you're communicating, hopefully you're not speaking in a way that's hurting others, or again, taking on an energy where you're speaking to yourself in a way that's hurting you. This is a great opportunity to become aware of those kinds of patterns and make some important and meaningful strides forward in healing that. Moving down to Eris in Aries, right? She, in the Greek pantheon, is the sister of Mars. She is known as the goddess of discord. Find the Greek pantheon in Western astrology. It's helpful to a point, but at the same time, I find it really myopic, particularly when we're talking about the female archetypes. Her famous contribution was throwing the golden apple of discord at the wedding, which ignited the Trojan War. So Eris was the goddess that was left out of being invited to the party. Next to Chiron, sitting next to this North Node, what are the parts of ourselves that feel left out, that feel unworthy in a sense of being included or being invited? is there a part of us where we feel a sense of, shame or isolation or being different in a way that causes us to be rejected? And that goes right along with this Chiron and Aries, right? Healing our ability to feel whole, to feel like all of the parts of ourselves are okay, right? Bringing back into the fold, inviting back into our own personal party, the parts of us that feel wounded, that feel excluded, that feel not enough, right? And how that relates to potentially affects our relationships with other people, right? So taking a look at that energy and how can we bring that together? How can we, North Node, move forward and integrate all of these parts of ourselves so that we can be our best self, so that we can be our favorite self, right? We can really be moving forward with our life purpose, because Aries, so much of Aries, right, has to do with the fire in our belly, the wanting to get up in the morning and get out of bed because we're inspired, we're excited, we're ready to go on the adventure of life into the unknown. We don't know what we're going to meet when we walk out our front door, right? We don't. We think we know, but we don't. But being able to do that, being able to embrace what comes our way and to really live our purpose. Every single one of us that's alive right now is here on purpose with a purpose. And I know in the last few years in particular, a lot of people are struggling with that. They're struggling with a loss of sense of purpose, a loss of sense of self or self-autonomy. And so this is such a wonderful invitation to bring that back, right? To get that fire going, to start taking actionable steps to move forward. And to do that, we have to look at those places and spaces, potentially relationships as well, because this is talking so much directly to this eclipse, right? In relationships where maybe we have felt wounded, excluded, left out, not enough, we can't be heard, whatever it is, right? Whatever is coming up for you. And then of course, all of this happening square to Pluto in Capricorn. Pluto is now direct. It went direct on October the 10th. As I've mentioned in other videos, I talk about, frequently, Pluto is not the planet of sunshine, rainbows, and puppies. It does not deliver its message in a way that is gentle or comforting or, again, maybe pleasant. However, its function is so incredibly important, because what it's really trying to do is, it, in a sense, very bluntly shows us where disempowerment is, where the foundations of our life are rotting or falling apart, or we're not being treated well, right? Pluto has to do with power struggles, disempowerment, but ultimately, and this is the most important piece, empowerment. So big Pluto transits bring intensity. Pluto is also a planet of intensity, because they're trying to bring our attention. Right now, it's the focal point of this T square, right? It's the outlet of all of this energy. And really, at the end of the day, what is Pluto? Pluto is empowerment, and Pluto is transformation. Pluto is rebirth energy. But the challenge is to transform something, to have a rebirth, to have a phoenix moment. The thing before it has to go. It has to, in a sense, no longer exist. It has to go through a metaphorical death process, right? And that's not necessarily easy for us to embrace. Our relationship to those kinds of energies has been a little bit challenged, right? Especially over the last maybe several decades or century or so. But nonetheless, here we are. And so Pluto being direct, this big energy, when it changes directions, we feel even more intensity. We feel, woo, like this really big ramp up. So you may have noticed, whether it's in yourself or other people, like there's kind of like an energy that they may not know what to do with. So if you can have a little patience with yourself and others, it will be important. So Capricorn, when we're talking about Capricorn, what are we talking about? Well, in a global sense, we're talking about outside authorities. We're talking about governments. We're talking about structures. We're talking about laws and regulations. And so we can see in a world sense, a lot of places in the world are going through major changes, rebirths, right? A deconstruction so that something new can be born out of it, of the existing social structures. Whatever you thought was solid, right, was a sure bet. People in authority who maybe you thought had integrity, and it turns out they don't. They're the opposite of integrity. I'll just say that. So that's been coming up for us in a global sense. But in a personal sense, what Capricorn represents for us personally is it represents the energy of being able to govern our own life, to be our own authority, to have goals and direction and ambition. It's not a bad word, right? That we can go forward with, that we can achieve, that we can continue with, even when the going gets tough, right? Capricorn is a Saturn ruled planet. And Saturn really wants us to achieve greatness, wants to help us. And the way it does that is it gives us things to come up against, right? Challenges that we have to overcome, obstacles we have to go around, walls we got to bust through, like the Kool-Aid man, right? Those kinds of things have really been coming up. And so, how are we integrating all of these things with ourselves, our own autonomy, our self-agency, with our respect for, our consideration of other people with whom we are relating, and how this fits into the bigger picture of our life? Do we feel like we can steer our own ship? Do we have an intention and a goal when we wake up in the morning that we are fired up and can't wait to engage with? Are we living a life where we feel like we have support from other people? Do we feel like all of these things are in balance, or at least in some way resembling something that isn't complete chaos? What does that look like? What does that feel like? Just very briefly, completing this cardinal cross energy would be Cancer, right? The Cancer energy. Cancer having to do with our emotional authority, right? Our feelings, our ability to nurture ourself, our ability to, Cancer, has that shell on the outside, in a sense, protect ourselves from sometimes the outside world or people that are seeking to take advantage of us. And that could be, again, in our relationships. It just depends on where this is in your chart, what's going on for you personally, but recovering all of that energy. So again, if you've got planets sitting in this area, or you are a Pluto and Libra person and you've just been going through or finishing up your Pluto square, this eclipse has a lot of intensity here. But I do want to say, when you get through it, going through it may not be fun. It may be, it might be, and I don't want to take that away. So if you're rocking your Pluto square and it feels great to you, oh my gosh, keep going. Like, don't feel like you need to, wait for the other shoe to drop. But if you have been struggling, on the other side of this, there really is the opportunity for rebirth and for more empowerment, and to feel really settled in yourself, and to feel like you really can make a difference and be the captain of your own ship. So okay, Pluto in Libra. So the dates, you can read the dates up there for yourself. Pluto, went back into Virgo for a little bit, and then it went forward into Scorpio a little bit, came back. So if you're born within these ranges, then you've got Pluto in Libra, if you didn't know that already. So why is this important? Well, the Aries and Libra nodes, right, are transiting this generation's natal Pluto sign. Pluto being that transformation energy, right? The nodes are the nodes of fate. So it's energizing, it's really energizing that need for transformation. Okay, that need in some cases for a rebirth. It just depends again on where this is sitting and what's happening in your life. So why am I making a big deal out of this now? Well, the eclipse that's happening on the 14th will be conjunct. It will be peanut butter and jelly. It'll be right on top of some of the people born in this generation's natal Pluto sign. So it's going to be like really, really speaking to them in a personal way. Those particular souls in the group between about December 25th, 1978 through about October 10th, 1981. Now, this particular group, there's a subgroup in there who also have their natal Jupiter and Saturn conjunct in Libra. I mean, I'll do a different video about this because it's such a big and fascinating topic to me. But that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Libra will be activated on the next Libra eclipse, which is happening March 25th, 2024. So this group of souls really getting some opportunities for a Phoenix moment, for transformation, for empowerment. So Pluto and Libra topics, those were about doing relationships differently. So divorce was taboo before that, right? It wasn't really socially acceptable, even though it had been done. They're choosing to do relationships in a way where maybe they don't commit and don't get married. A lot of the adults in this generation chose not to. They chose to get into partnerships instead, to have children outside of marriage instead. There was also the movement with the gay and lesbian, right? Marriage equality as well. That was happening during the 1970s and also carried on for those children that were born in this era of being interested in those topics and seeing them through. Equality in relationships. So, yeah, between potentially the husband and wife or men and women or whomever, right? Bosses and coworkers. It's just in an overarching sense, there was this seeking out of no longer being subordinate in whatever way or topic that happens to apply to. Relatability. Pluto in Libra generation has really mastered the art of being able to relate to the other. They're really good at being able to see things from another person's perspective, being able to imagine themselves walking in the other person's shoes, so to speak. They're really, really good at that, which comes with its challenges. We'll talk about that in a second. Pluto and Libra also looking for, again, fairness and balance and peace and justice. All of those kinds of things were big topics during this era and for the souls that were born with this placement. Women's rights became really important, became a big topic in society, right, during the 1970s and going forward, having to do with Venus ruling the sign of Libra. So those things came up. And glam rock and androgyny and music, right? That became a thing. So I always find that one a little fascinating. I'm personally really into, or used to really be into music. So I'm always fascinated by the music trends, and that happened to be one of the music trends. The shadow, the challenging, the not so nice parts of Pluto in Libra, right? The unconscious people pleasing. So for the souls born with this, don't feel shame around that. The internet psychologists, everyone's an armchair psychologist right now, right? Talk about this a lot. They talk about, the people pleasing and how it's so toxic and things like that. And not that that isn't true. But with Pluto and Libra, Pluto has to do with our unconscious patternings, right? Our subconscious. Carl Jung talked a lot about, having to go and make your shadow self conscious. You have to go in and look at these things and understand why this is occurring. So for people with Pluto and Libra, it's not necessarily something that you're doing in a conscious, purposeful way. It could be, but a lot of it really has to do with understanding the opposite sign, which is Aries, and having to reclaim a sense of self. Why? Because there was, for a lot of these souls, a loss of self, and inability to be able to stand up for themselves. Or at least they got a lot of practice in having to do that because they had a lot of conflict to deal with, a lot of people challenging their sense of self. And depending on how that energy is integrated in your own personal chart, in your own personal life, that was either easy for you or really hard for you, or any of those nuances in between. Being taken advantage of. That's a big one. With Pluto and Libra generation, because they want fairness, because they're interested in, the me and the you having I guess in a sense, like both having something, right? It opened up avenues for people who are predators on those who are kind and want peace over, conflict, who aren't, in a sense, equipped or ready to push back. Don't have that Aries sense of like, whoa, 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 don't have that Mars that says, hey, now cut it out. Right. This is my boundary. This is where I am. What you're doing is not okay. These people were more interested often in keeping the peace and not rocking the boat. And often that resulted in being taken advantage of, right? Or also being coerced into settling for less than, right? Less than optimal, less than they deserved, less than other people were getting, or being passed over. And then the other side of this, there could have been an unwillingness to compromise, to consider others, or to commit to things, right? So that would be the opposite end, the Aries or the Mars overcompensation from seeing or experiencing that loss of self, the being taken advantage of, the people pleasing, all of those kinds of things are possibilities. All right, taking a look at the eclipse through the houses. Now, these are written from the vantage point of your rising sign, but if you don't know your rising sign, you're welcome to use your sun sign instead. Of course, if your rising and sun sign happen to be the same, then easy peasy for you. So, do a brief overview going through what this eclipse could mean in the different areas of the chart. So Libra rising, we'll begin with you. We won't begin with Aries. We'll begin with Libra this time. This eclipse taking place in your first house. So all of the things that I mentioned before, right? The houses tell us the area of life. The planets tell us what the action is. The sign tells us kind of how that action is what's the word I'm looking for? How that action is appearing. There we go. The lens through which we're seeing it. And the houses tell us the where this action is taking place. So the house of yourself, right? Your identity, your vitality, the first impressions that you make and that you receive when you step out your front door and you start interacting with the world, right? It's your approach to life. It's representative of beginnings, beginning new things, right? Even though it's Libra, we're still beginning because we're in the first house. And it also has to do with your physical body. So all of that taking place here, opposing over on the other side, that Aries energy. So here's our first house, and we've got this seventh house, Libra. So really for you guys, I mean, in a literal sense, this really does have to do with yourself and the other, right? Other people. So that's your one-on-one partnerships. Those can be romantic, they can be intimate. It might be your marriage partner, could be your business partner. The other thing it could be your open enemies. What do I mean by that? Or adversaries, people that you know of that are in some way working against you. Something, along these lines could be coming up for you. And then, of course, the big news, I'll just stick with the big three of this T-square, talking about Pluto, right? Pluto in Capricorn, down there in potentially your fourth house. So balance at home, right? Balance in the outer world, balance with yourself, balance with your partner. Lots coming up here. How is the kind of compass of your life going to heal, going to transform with this eclipse coming up? Virgo and Virgo rising. So this is happening in your second house, Virgos, right? We're talking about my stuff, right? Your stuff, your money, your resources, your possessions, your self-worth, self-value, your talents and your capacities, your money and your earning power, right? And your relationship to value. So what in those scripts potentially do you need to let go of? Or what do you need to make peace with, right? What do you need to move on from? What new cycle, because the solar energy, I didn't talk about this, but the solar eclipse energy is a new cycle. So we have to start something new. right? We also have to let something go. So what are we looking at there? And how this relates to the eighth house, right? The eighth house is our joint resources, right? It's other people's resources. It has to do with inheritance. It has to do with psychology and therapy and taboo subjects and hidden subjects and things like that. Squaring off with Pluto in your fifth house, right? The fifth house is the games and our hobbies and our creative expression, right? It's theater. It is our audience, like who we're in front of. Who do we feel like we can be our Capricorn selves in front of? What is the right audience with this T square? Right? Who is the right audience in a sense to invest in? Am I in the right place potentially? And mostly we're talking about how this is affecting, right, your resources, your value, your talents and capacities, all of those kinds of delicious Taurus subjects. Leo and Leo rising in your third house of communication, right, of networking. Sorry, this one gets a little sideways, just happens to be the computer program I use for generating charts is limited in some capacities. But anyhow, going back, your networking, your communication, your neighbors, your neighborhood, right? Third house also has to do with your early experiences and your childhood experiences. We're talking about short journeys here. So what do I mean by short journeys? Things you can get to by walking, by biking, short car trips, right? And we're talking about long journeys, which would be ninth house. We're talking about things like overseas, having to get on an airplane, that kind of stuff. I know in our modern life, some of that feels a little maybe archaic to talk about, but that's essentially what we're talking about here. So how can you improve this area? What do you need to let go of? Right? What do you need to embrace? Some of what you need to embrace is in this ninth house. So maybe it could be communicating more with people from other places, other cultures, other spaces who are further away from you. Squaring off with Pluto, right, in your sixth house. So the sixth house is day-to-day routines. It is our daily rituals, what we devote ourselves to. It describes the environment of our workplace, which is different than our career, right? Different than our vocation. If that's applicable to you and where you are in your life right now. It has to do with apprenticeships and unequal relationships in the sense of like student teacher. Maybe that could be something. Maybe you are a teacher and you're finding your place of work changing. Maybe you were working remotely and that no longer is fitting for you. Maybe you're getting a chance, an opportunity to go somewhere else and learn, or even doing things in like publishing or marketing. Maybe that kind of stuff is coming up for you or will be coming up for you. So there could be this opportunity to transform your work life, your day-to-day routine in some way, your health, your wellness, paying attention to subjects like that. Talking about Cancers and Cancer risings. Again, I'm going to apologize. It drives me crazy that the chart is a little askew, but I had to do the best I could with what I had at the time. So Libra rules the fourth house, and we've got Cancer rising. So we've got that fourth house, 10th house energy going on. Fourth house has to do with your foundation, with your home, with your private life, your inner world, in a sense, your safe spaces, where you feel like you can go to retreat, right? Shut the outside world out, and this is my safe space, whether that's your literal home or it's somewhere else. This has to do with your inner world and your inner authority, your emotional authority. Also has to do with your roots, your ancestors, your heritage, your generational signature, perhaps. And in a practical sense, it has to do with land and property, right? And this could include, again, the physical home that you currently live in. I didn't write this on here, but this is also the parental axis. So parental, we could look at mom and dad. That might be applicable to you. It could be whoever your primary caregivers were or are. Taking a look at that, what were the stories there? What did we learn from our home environment? What did we come up with? What do we need to do to go forward towards this North Node, which is in the 10th house, which is our outside life, our social life, our career, our ambitions, our achievements? Do we have balance between the outer world and the inner world, right? What does that look like? Are you sitting too much on one side of it? Do you need to engage a little bit more on the other side? Do you feel like who you are out in the world can fully express yourself? Do you feel like you have a place in your relationships at home, in your inner world, where you feel a sense of harmony, right? A sense of ease. And of course, this squaring off with Pluto in the 7th house. So the 7th house of other people, right? The other. How is this working? Do you feel like you can stand up in your relationships? Do you feel like you are being passed over? Do you feel like you have goals? Do you feel like you can be, in a sense, like your own boss, right? Do you have a sense of balance there? Do you need to maybe Pluto transform the way you've been doing relationships prior to now? Or maybe this has already come through for you, right? And this could be a messaging about relationships too. It doesn't have to necessarily mean something like sometimes I hear some Cancer rising, like, oh my gosh, my relationship's going to end. Well, maybe, but maybe not as well. There could be a deepening of relationships here, of feeling more empowerment through relationships now that you've understood how to balance your needs a little bit more, right? Between who you are in here, who you are out there, and then, of course, the opposite. Because this is cardinal, right? We're looking at Cancer, your inner authority, your emotional self. How are all of those things coming into play? Okay, looking at Gemini and Gemini rising. So this is sitting in your 5th house, the 5th house, creative expression, right? Play, games, hobbies, theater, and your audience, risk taking. This has to do with children. It could be literally, it could be your inner child, just depends on what's going on in your own personal life. This also has to do with romance and love affairs, right? So the sign of partnership in the sign of love affairs, talking about that balance with the 11th house. So the 11th house has to do with our friends, our social groups, our teams and clubs and organizations that we belong to, science and technology and innovation and things like that. In maybe a very practical sense, how are your friendships to your love life? How is that working out for you? Is that in balance? Do you feel like you have connections with people who are letting you be yourself in your friend groups, right? Do you have things that are authentic expressions of who you are, or do you feel like you're staying maybe in the same hobbies or games, or staying with the same, when I'm talking about audience, it's like the people you're in front of? Do you feel like you're maybe stuck in a pattern that those people no longer really reflect who you are now? Is that something maybe you need to let go of? Do you feel like you are able to speak up, right? In a certain sense, I mean, maybe in a very literal sense, you are in some kind of play, or you're a dancer or whatever, or you're on some kind of stage. That would have to do with this axis as well, as being in front of people and audience selection, who you're around. Do you feel like you matter? Do you feel seen? Do you feel appreciated? Do you feel like there's fairness in those ways? Because it's squaring off with Pluto in your 8th house, right? Other people, other people's resources. Do you feel like you have empowered choices in that way? Do you feel like you have a sense of authority? Do you feel like you have a say? Do you feel like you have places and spaces where your own goals are being recognized within whatever joint ventures you are engaging in? Big transformation here also possible in the 8th house. This is Pluto, one of Pluto's natural realms. It's the modern ruler of Scorpio, and the 8th house has to do with some of the Scorpio type subjects. So big transformations maybe even taking place. Maybe this is a space where you really recognize how much you have transformed or rebirthed your life in some way, and you're like, yeah, I'm really ready to go to the next level. So I love that for you. Okay, Taurus and Taurus rising. We've got this eclipse happening in the 6th house. So the 6th house of day-to-day routines, day-to-day affairs, your day-to-day rituals. What are you devoting your time to? Right? What are you willing to do over and over and over again for your own health, wellness, right? It has to do with, I'm including diet of, what we eat, not just what we eat, but also what we are consuming. Okay. So diet isn't just food, but it's also, what are you listening to? Right? What's your environment, like your work environment potentially? What are you taking in? Right? Is that supporting your health and well-being, your sense of overall balance or not? This could have to do with your work environment for those of you which that applies. It could have to do with your bosses or your coworkers, and maybe, seeking something where it is potentially more fair. Or at least being able to have more balance and more of a sense of say, and what that looks like for you day to day. So this opposing the 12th house. So the 12th house it's a mystical house. It's a tough house to describe because it has to do with things in a way that are beyond words. Has to do with things that are beyond tangibility, right? It has to do with mysticism and dreams and visions, with secrets. It has to do with places where we are in isolation. So that could be wanted or unwanted, right? It could be in a sense where you go on a retreat, and maybe it's a silent retreat and you're going, to really find yourself, right? Aries in that kind of way. It could be a place where it's not welcome and you feel cut off or excluded in some way. Hopefully it's welcome, but it might not be. And looking at that, and it's squaring off here with that Pluto in the 9th house. So when I look at this axis, to me, what it also has to do with is balancing. So this would be in the natural zodiac, like the Pisces and Virgo axis, which has to do again with being of service, right? Or being service to self, service to the collective, really picking up on the collective unconscious energy through that 12th house. How is that potentially affecting your day-to-day affairs? Do you have a sense of autonomy outside of this feeling of getting caught up in the collective? Maybe you fight on behalf of the collective? I don't know. But something in that way coming up against, the 9th house here. Some of it has to do also with our belief systems and maybe how those have been changing, and maybe what we're engaging with or whom we're talking to has changed. The goals and the ambitions that we have for ourselves, our ability to govern ourselves, maybe they have really shifted a lot. And maybe this has to do with potentially coming in contact with people from other places, other cultures, other viewpoints. Maybe in a way, this is you being able to take your inner world and merge it with your outer world, right? Get a little bit more balance here, and you're doing something in marketing yourself, right? Could have something to do with that, but just looking at how those things are in balance, how they've transformed and how they have changed. And, in a sense, like, where do you maybe want them to change a little further. All right, Aries and Aries rising. So we've got Aries on that first house here. So really looking at, again, where are you going, right? North node. And can you take the parts of yourself that maybe feel excluded or beat up or wounded, right? Whatever it is that felt taken advantage of, can you heal those things and bring them back into the fold? Okay, so we've got this, excuse me, seventh house, the eclipse happening in the seventh house of your relationships, your one-on-one relationships. How is that going for you? Do you feel like your romantic partners or your business partners, that you have a sense of equality and of fairness and of give and take? Or have things gotten, out of whack to the point where you're being forgotten? Do you need a little bit more oomph to get out of bed, to get a new routine, to start a new cycle for yourself going forward? What do you want to self-actualize? What do you want to lead with? Right? Is that in balance with your partnerships? Do you have people that support you as well? I would say on this one. So Pluto in the 10th, all of this kind of affecting who you are out in the world, who you are outside, and how much that has been changing over the past, since Pluto was in Capricorn since 2008, over the past 15 years. There's been a tremendous amount, I'm guessing, of change for a lot of you in the area of either your career or your social status, maybe becoming a parent, what else? Achievements and recognitions, or the loss of them potentially. Maybe the feeling of like, maybe you, for some of you, have built a business and it crumbled, and you having to regenerate your self status in some kind of way. Maybe that has been happening, and hopefully now, with all the things that have gone on, you have a clearer sense of who you are, what you want, and how that can be in balance with yourself and other people. How that can really, when you've got yourself and your support systems of other people, when those things are working well, how that can also support your 10th house, your life outside. Right? Because this is also that cardinal axis, that cardinal square of the Aries, the Cancer, right? Who you are at home. How's your home? Is it supporting you? Do you feel like you are emotionally safe, right, within yourself? Do you feel like all of those things are working, and how that has changed? And if there's anything that needs to be let go of, then this eclipse may make that clear for you. All right, 8th house for our Pisces and Pisces rising friends. We've got, whoopsies, you'll take it. Libra on the 8th house. So fairness in joint resources, fairness in joint ventures, right? Fairness and hopefully justice in how we're working deeply with other people. Having a sense of balance in your own transformational journey, feeling like fairness, feeling like justice, feeling like maybe other people are helping you regenerate. And this could be through working in psychology or therapy. This could be maybe you're becoming more interested in occult, means things that are hidden, right? Subjects or esoteric subjects, that's becoming something that is helping you to bring balance into your life. This also is opposing over here that 2nd house, Aries. So really taking the reins a lot of the time, right? Who you are is in essence your greatest resource, right? So how does that work when we're talking about other people and our ability to merge our resources? Because remember, 2nd house is money and it's earning power and it's all those kinds of things. But in a sense, there's only so far you can get by yourself, right? There's a cap, there's a ceiling, there's a limit there before you really do need other people. You need other people's help, whether that's in a literal sense of money or whether it's in a literal sense of, service or it's ideas. We, at a certain point, each one of us realizes we need help from someone else. So how is that working for you? And how does that fold in with this Pluto in Capricorn here in your 11th house of your vision for the future, your hopes and your dreams and your wishes? Do you have support there? Do you have the right audience there that's helping you achieve your goals and your dreams and your ambitions? Do you have that? How has that changed over the course of the last 15 years? Right? Do you feel empowered in your groups, in your teams, in your organizations, or not? Right? Maybe even, well, no, I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to go there. Yeah. How is that? How has that been working for you? What new things do you potentially want to start in those areas of your life? Okay. All right. Aquarius and Aquarius rising. Get a little water. Starting to get raspy. So that's happening in Eclipse, 9th house. Right? The 9th house of higher education. What do we mean higher education? That could be a relative term, right? But typically we're talking about things that are beyond what we call in the United States, like grade school and high school. So it would be like university and beyond, or things that require a different level of mastery or skill that are beyond the basics in a sense. This could be really working its magic in your belief systems, whatever those may be, your philosophies, your theosophies, right? Your long distance travel and the people that you're meeting in foreign cultures or foreign places, whether that's, this is the 9th house of publishing and marketing. Maybe you're even just reading books about it for now, right? How has that contributed to your overall sense of balance? Maybe you're in a relationship with someone who is from another part of the world, and how is that, contributing to the balance of your life? Do you feel like there's fairness there? Do you feel like there's equality there? Is there a way where you can bring things to even more sense of harmony should disharmony occur? Is there a belief system that maybe doesn't work for you anymore that you need to take a look at, that maybe you believed something for a long time that you thought was fair and just and true, and maybe you're taking another look at it and going, I'm not so sure about that anymore. So potentially how something like that could have changed or shifted. Pluto, again, I talked about, sorry, the computer program I use, Astrological, I don't know how to make it do changing signs on rising. So if any of y'all know, please tell me in the comments, because it's one of my biggest gripes about this particular software. But Pluto is actually in the 12th house here. It would not be in the 1st house, even though it kind of looks like it. So Pluto really transforming, in a sense, your background story, right? Your unconscious patterns. Like, how have those changed over the last 15 years? What have you found yourself no longer resonating with? Where have you been in your dream life? Or have you felt kind of secluded or isolated in a way where you've been doing a ton of internal work on your belief systems, your thoughts, the way you speak with other people, how you communicate, things like that? How has that changed? And when Pluto is going to be coming over, right? It's already, maybe for some of you, done it, but it's going to be coming over into that 1st house, right? Your Aquarius house. And that's really, so much of this has to do, I know this is a little bit more Plutonian, but a lot of this having to do with transforming your sense of self in some really big ways. How do you feel like you have more self-autonomy and more self-empowerment through maybe learning another subject, or learning about justice, or about the law, or about mediation. How has that helped you to transform who you are in the world and who you want to be? Capricorn and Capricorn rising. All right, we have another one of our cardinal energies here on that first house. So when we're talking about our Capricorn rising, it's putting this eclipse in the 10th house. Oops, excuse me. Go back. Sorry about that. It's putting this energy in the 10th house. So in essence, we've got a little bit of harmony here of that Capricorn rising energy, right? Of that first house. This is how, in a sense, I identify. My identity is linked somewhat with what I do, right? So relationships, relating, justice and fairness, like how is that relating to your outer life, your social life? What has that been looking like in terms of your achievements and your honors, your reputation and what you're known for? How has this changed your relationship to outside authorities? How has this changed your relationship to social structures? Maybe you thought you would be in a certain part of society, or a job, or a career, or a whatever it is, and then you've kind of found like, maybe that no longer resonates for me, right? Because Capricorn been going through that first house sense of self-identity. How has that changed for you? Right? Because we've got Aries on this fourth house cusp, right? A lot of the other part of your identity here is at home, is in your home life, right? Who you are in here, who you are when you're not out in the world. Do you have a sense of balance between the outer and the inner world, between the me and the you with other people, right? That Cancer on that other side, that seventh house. How has this changed for you? What does it feel like? Does your partner feel supportive? Do you feel like you have, and this could be your intimate relationships or not, but do you feel like you have a partner that feels like home, that feels comfortable, that feels nurturing? Do you have those things, right, helping you? Because you really got some ambition here, a lot of goals, a lot of drive, a lot of ability to stay focused for the long haul, which is so beautiful. Do you have those things that feel like they are supporting who you are now? Because like I said, all these big changes, whatever they've been for you, maybe you've become a parent, and that has changed how your social structure, your career structure is looking, and you need a little bit more balance there because you got to put more energy into your home life. Right, whatever this is for you there. How can this eclipse bring you healing and transformation? How has that been occurring for you? 11th house. All right, my 11th house, Libra. Eclipse people, this is for our Sagittarius rising friends. So speaking of friends, you've got this eclipse in the house of friendship, right? It's friends, it's groups, it's teams, it's organizations, it's hopes and dreams and visions of the future, right? This is the house of the forward thinking. This is also our house that has to do with liberation, right? Maybe there's a little bit more innovation here. Has to do with social groups and social movements and global and humanitarian movements, things like that. How has that changed for you, right? How has this energy been feeling? Does it feel like it's in some sense of balance and fairness? Are you perhaps working more towards seeking in a more active way a sense of fairness, a sense of harmony within your social groups, within your visions of the future? Are you able to, Mercury, like speak that, communicate that? Has that been feeling like it's been a little stifled, perhaps? You've got Aries on your fifth house here. So this 11th, fifth house axis also has to do with our audiences, in a sense, like who we are in front of, right? So in a sense, Are we in front of people who recognize, Aries, our independent self? Can we be can we be a leader? Can we take charge? Can we go forward? Can we do all of those things? Can we, maybe in our romantic relationships, kind of in a sense, take the lead, right? In our friend groups, do we have friends who are treating us with fairness and justice? Sometimes we think we've gotten involved with a social movement that says it's for, peace and harmony, but we actually find out that they're not really doing that. Maybe they're actually the aggressor and not the harmonizer. So taking a look at some of those patterns. Also here, with that South Node and Libra, and this being the 11th house, in a sense, maybe relying too much on friends and not enough on, the 5th house has to do with our creative capabilities as well. Maybe not giving our creative self the platform that it needs, right? Or the attention that it needs. Maybe a little bit over reliance on friends to bring that to us. So that kind of just came in. So I don't know who that's for, but squaring off with Pluto in our 2nd house, right? So Pluto in a 2nd house coming through and really maybe shaking up the foundation of what you thought your talents and resources were, or what you thought your earning power was. Pluto also could have brought you great blessings where it's been a lot easier for you to earn money or to feel a sense of bodily autonomy over the past 15 years. So there could be good things there. Maybe you feel a lot more empowered with your own value, right? You really actually recognize your own value now. And how has that changed, your relationship potentially to your children, potentially to your friends or the groups or the things that you're interested in? How has that changed your vision of the future? How has that changed how you want to creatively self-actualize your life? Scorpio and Scorpio rising. Sorry to keep you waiting, Scorpios. We've got your eclipse happening in this 12th house. So 12th house, challenging house to put into words, right? As I talked about this when we talked about Libra being the 6th house, the 12th house has to do so much with the things that are intangible. It has to do with things that we can't necessarily always measure in an easy way, although we are getting the abilities to do that, that bridge between in a sense, like science on that 6th house, Virgo, kind of mercurial house with that Pisces energy that underlies this house. So really being able to find balance between the as above in the 12th house and the so below in the 6th house in a really literal sense. Like, do we feel that we can take the energy from the cosmos, from the ether, whatever it is, and apply it to our daily life? Does it feel like we are in balance there, or are we getting stuck at one end of this spectrum? The 12th house itself has to do with mysticisms and dreams and the ethereal world. And as I mentioned earlier, ether. So pay attention to your dreams if you do have dreams. At night, nighttime dreams, like pay attention to those, see what messages come up. If you have a dream journal or not, start one, and see what promptings you're getting, see what synchronicities you're finding. Pay attention to those kinds of things, because that is, right, one of the ways in which the universe, in which God speaks to us, is through symbols, is through dreams, is through synchronicities, is through sometimes non-tangible, right, ways. It can be more of an intuition, right? That subtle realm that's not always so loud, right? Most of the time it's not loud. Almost all the time it's not like a super loud invasive thing. It's that subtle soft kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, it's like a warm, like a glow kind of energy, but it's not necessarily, like the stereo turned up to 11. So how is that coming through for you right now, right? What's happening in the collective unconscious? So with Libra here and that collective unconscious, are you really picking up on that sense of injustice that's in the world, the sense of like things aren't fair, a sense of wanting to really deeply harmonize the world, and how you can do that? And one of the ways here is, collective meditation we know this now, there's people who are measuring this now, how that has an effect on the harmony of the world, the beauty of the world. So maybe that's something that you are engaging in, or maybe that's something that's of interest to you, to kind of help on that subtle level, to engage on that subtle level. And then another piece here, what is your relationship to God, to spirit, to those intangible realms? Do you feel like there is a sense of universal fairness, right? Um, do you feel like you can engage with that in a meaningful way and bring it down into this world in a Aries, a tangible way, a new way? Whatever you're getting, whatever you're downloading, can you take it and really bring it forward? Can you trust in the unknown and do something potentially new? Whether that's your day-to-day life, that's your workspace, whatever it is. It's also sixth house. I didn't say this on the sixth house, but small pets and animals, like maybe you have a new one and that's changing how you're relating to yourself and your unconscious. Squaring off with, Pluto in that fourth house, right? So the sense of home, maybe your sense of home has been really shaken, or third house, not fourth house. Let me redo that. So so all of this, looking for balance, looking through this outlet, right, in Pluto and Capricorn in that third house. How do you feel like you can communicate the as above, so below? Do you feel like you have the resources, right? How has what you've been learning over the past 15 years been shaping and changing the way in which you see and interact with the world? How is that changing your day-to-day life? How is that shaping how you're showing up in your local community, right? What are some possible changes that could happen there? Or what are some things that you feel like you could be doing better, get more in balance, right? How is that transformed for you? Or how do you want it to continue to transform over this next eclipse season? That was a lot of information there. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope it gave you a sense of grounding, or at least a sense of what this eclipse could potentially bring in the broader picture right into your life. So I hope it was useful. Let me know in the comments what you thought and how this eclipse may be working out for you. Till next time, thank you. Take care.